start with the server part, and then one of the most important files, and that is the package.json. Then we're gonna discuss the conf.js and app.js. Let me check. Package.json, that's where we're gonna start. Package.json is used by the Node package manager, npm, to install the dependencies. And in here we have dependencies, and there are two independent dependencies that we will use. That's express and that's mongoose, no others. Package.json is located in the server directory. We're focusing on the server now for this part, and we are now discussing the package.json file. We build this by hand, this file. There's a name for it, that's demo. There's a version, private, true, scripts, standard, node, app.js, that's the name of our application, and then the dependencies. Every time I add a new dependency, I have to do an npm install, and it will install the new dependencies. The dependencies are installed in a Node modules directory in the same place as where package.js is located, and that is not required in the repository, because on this machine I'm developing on a Mac machine, and if I'm distributing that applications to a Windows machine or for production on a Linux machine, then that binary files in the directory node modules will not work on other platforms. So I'm using a git ignore file, and we can see that node modules is not included in the repository. I do not discuss the other files. The ID is for WebStorm, but well, that's it. Another important file is located in the config directory. If you have downloaded it, then you will see that there is a config.json.default, and I created a default so that you will have to copy it and have to think about it. So what I now just did was copying the config.js.default file to config.js, and that's where my configuration is stored. Two things that are important here. One is the database, and this is the connect string, that's MongoDB. It's located on localhost, and the name of the database is P123456. And the port number I'm using is 3000. If you have assigned another port number, then you have to change that, of course. For development on localhost you can do whatever you like, but if you're deploying on a server, then you might have a port number that is designated to you. So that's that for the exports for the config.js. Well, a little bit more. There's a development, test and production, and it's pretty easy to make to change that for test and production, so that your code does not change even if it's moving to other environments. And that's important. So you never want to change code from one to another environment. But this is our config.js. You have to change this to your database, and you have to change the port number that is designated to you. That about the config.js file. There's more to talk about the app.js that's given to you. It won't change much further on, and there's a lot to see here, but this will be the structure that you will using, and I'm making just a walkthrough to this. So app.js, that's the file we're starting when we start Node with some file, and that will be app.js. What's in here? We have require, and we see that require express. Later on we will see mongoose. File system, HTTP and path are also required. Require is including a library or package or module, whatever the name you choose for it. In here, next line, I define an environment variable, but I define a variable that's called env. And no.env, this can be interesting if you have an environment variable node_env that is defined and has development, and has a certain value, and that certain value can be either development, test or production, then that will be used and default will be development. So if nothing is defined, then development it will be. Then we require config/config.js with the environment variable, and that's what we will see here. That development is what we will use from exports. Okay. Next, database connection. That's not required here, so we can skip that for now. Yes, that's right. Debugging, it's either on or off. That's not in here, so let's add it. Debugging, let's set that to true. Do not forget sets debugging on or off, and if it's true then it's on, and if it's false then it's off, the debugging. Save, never forget to save, and then we will use the debugging here. Okay. Next in here we're gonna read all the modules in the app models directory. That's in here. The directory structure we choose, we have a client and a server. Now we're focusing on server. In server we have an app directory, and we maintain the MVC structure and without a view, because we do views only on the client side. So we have controllers and models and no views in here. And every view that is located in models, we will read that with this piece of code. So /app models, that's how models path is defined and what are the files. We scan the directory, so how many files are there, and for every file we find, we will require that specific file. So it's easy to add extra models, same for controllers, to add new files to it, and this will read every file that is in models. Next, we will define express, that's the middleware. Then we configure it with a specific port number. That port number is defined in conf.js, port 3000. In this example, whether we will use a favorite icon or not, how the structure of the log file will look like. You can choose between default, short, tiny or def. We will choose development. We will use only JSON and URL encoded request. That's more safe. Method override, so we can use put and delete for REST requests. The cookie parser for cookies that will be sent in the header. A session ID will be used to keep sessions in sync or make sessions stateful. The router, we come to that in detail, that will run the routes. And then we have static, then we have a directory for the static files that's in client. And here we come to that later. So you see here's index.html. We have JavaScript, we do not have CSS in here, and we have partials that are our views. We come to that later. And now we are still in the apps. We have an error handler, and this is where the HTTP server will be created that will listen on a specific port. We do a console log message where it's listening on, and then almost at the end we will bootstrap the routes. And the same as with models, we have routes, read what's in the directory, and for every file that's in that directory require it. So it's easy to add routes. That's just a new file, and that file will be included. And the last line is to serve actually the static pages. Well, that's a walkthrough on the server side of the application. Next, we will go to the detail.